Welcome to Cracking the Coaching Code. I'm Michael Waddington, a lawyer, professional coach, and best-selling author.
And I am Victor Gonzalez, Galeano, entrepreneur, former banker, and leadership coach. We love coaching people and helping them awaken their gifts within. Together, we have a mission and goal to help coaches build a successful coaching practice. Join us every week on the first and third Wednesday of every month as we bring to you knowledge, findings, and research that will help you propel your coaching practice to levels you've never seen before. I am excited about today's guest, Jose Ortiz, who is how do they call him? They don't call him retired accountants. They call him
recovering accountants.
Recovering accountants, and who's built a successful practice as an accountant and now has joined the coaching practice. So he's actually going through the growing pains of transitioning from a successful accounting firm practice career into a coaching career, where now he's taking it to a level where he's helping at a greater place his clients to identify what is best for them as it relates to their financial well-being. So, Jose, welcome to our class.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mike and Victor.
All right. Michael, I know you're dying to ask a question.
Yeah, I'm just going to get down to it. So when you're transitioning, Jose, over to being a coach, what would you say your biggest hurdle was coming from the professional sector over to professional coaching?
Well, that requires a lot of introspection, doesn't it? I mean, so the hardest thing for me, but it happened naturally, I would say, is just I got into a lot of self-development. I knew things were not quite the way I wanted them to be necessarily in my life. I didn't feel as gratified as I wanted to and fulfilled. So I delved into this world of self-development. And then I started realizing, wait a minute, I'm in an industry that is so in need of this kind of work. A lot of business owners out there are just struggling with their accounting, with their finances.
So in terms of you giving advice to someone that is transitioning from like being an accountant or a lawyer, or a lot of the people that we talk to, Victor and I we have friends that are doctors, dentists, all sorts of professionals. And their biggest question generally when they're getting started is, how do we get clients? How do we get coaching clients? So if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about your thoughts on that process.
Yeah, and especially with me, because my industry is looked at, I don't want to say in a negative light. It's just we're nerdy, we're this, we're that, we're sharp edged and all that stuff. So there's a lot of things that you kind of have to deal with, and especially you have to deal with that impression, those first impressions. And in my particular scenario, what I found, because I'm dealing with money, because we're dealing with accounting, is I had to get vulnerable with my clients. In other words, I had to show them that I wasn't necessarily this astute CPA, whatever you want to call it. And in fact, I know a whole bunch of CPAs who are not. So the reality is we're human beings. And then once I'm able to show that to people, then it just opens up the floor for a broader discussion.
So go ahead, Victor.
I was just dying to ask a question because I know that Jose has this incredible onboarding process where he puts himself at the level with the client. So can you talk a little bit more about how that happens and how you kind of matched up the accounting world with the coaching world when you're onboarding your clients?
Take Well, I use a product. It's a company out of Atlanta called Financial DNA. And basically, it's an assessment where I take the client through this assessment, and it actually shows me a lot of their strengths and weaknesses. Well, of course, strengths and weaknesses naturally tied to the person you are, right? And that person can be developed. So that's how I will normally start it off from that point. And then as I'm onboarding, as you will, I take more of a mentorship role at that point, because you have to understand I'm dealing with a person who has emotions like anybody else, who deals with money, and money can be something that's intimidating, especially as a business owner. So that's how I usually get them started, and I progressively. What I like to say is I like to convert them from a business owner to an entrepreneur, a forward-thinking, long-term thinking entrepreneur.
And do you focus exclusively on accountants, or like your clients? Where do they generally come from?
Yes. So I've been back and forth with this in a lot of my mind. I had the privilege of being an auditor, and I say privilege even though I couldn't stand the time I was there, but I learned so much. So I learned a lot about about the different industries, and I was in logistics for a long time. But the thing is, and people ask me that, well, what's your niche? Because it's such a cliche thing to say now, right? Everybody needs a niche. Well, my niche is the right mindset. I need the right mindset. I need somebody who recognizes that they are in need, and they can't do this all by themselves, and they're coachable, right? We need those coachable clients.
You mean
So
when you say coachable, what do you mean by that?
that means that if we talk about something, they're going to follow through. They're going to actually do the things that I need them to do in order for them to kind of self-develop. Because a lot of what happens, as you know, as coaches, it comes from the inside out. The solutions are not outside; they're inside. So these people have to go through this process in order to generate that. If they're not doing the work, then how can they start?
Okay, so you tend to be more selective in terms of not so much what industry they're in. This is what I'm getting from what you're saying, but people that really want to be helped, whether or not they're a brand new business owner or a 35-year accountant. If they don't want to be helped, you don't want to try to help them. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. If they don't want to help themselves, and a lot of people want to show that on the face, but then once you start getting into the nitty-gritty, you find out a little bit different. That's when all these different things come in. That's where you have to coach them. So if they're going to put up this wall, it's really hard. It's really hard. And I know, we have egos out there, and I know that sometimes we want to just kind of take all of this stuff. But listen, business is not a one-person thing. It's just not. We need help. Everybody needs help.
I mean, so how do you do it? So this is a challenge. I think a lot of people in the coaching industry, especially newer ones, they want clients.
Yeah.
But they want clients that are good clients that'll pay them, that also will listen, because we want to actually help people. So are there any things you look for when you're onboarding a client to see if they really want to be helped, or if they're just kind of saying that they want to be helped?
Right. So, and I'm glad you asked that. I actually have, and that was one of my biggest challenges, as a matter of fact. But I have a way of kind of deciphering from that. I have a book that I assign. It's a short read. It can be read in a week. If that person, and it's totally about what we're talking about here, and if that person does not have an inkling to pick up that book in 1 week, when you could read it probably in 4 hours, whatever, then I already know. You know what I mean? So, and maybe there's more work that they need to kind of go through before they get to me, because obviously the student wasn't ready. So again, it's just something where I like to kind of set them off in the right direction. Well, the guy gave me a book and I never read it. Okay, well, let me pick up that book then. And maybe I'll pick up that book one day, and maybe I will pick up call a Victor, or call a Michael, or call Jose.
Do you mind me asking what book it is?
Yes, The Four Quadrants.
Okay.
Robert Kiyosaki. Yes.
Oh yeah, I've read that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, so,
okay.
I mean, yes. So if you're not willing, that's interesting. That's a great choice. So if someone's saying they want to grow their business and become financially self-sustaining and just improve all around financially, and they're unwilling to read something like that, that is a huge red flag.
And it's so easy. I mean, it's such an easy book to understand. There's no complexity. Of course, I'm an accountant. I hand over a book, and the first thing they think I'm gonna give them something by some kind of stock investment book or whatever. But it's just an easy thing, and it grabs the concept. The concept is there's 4 quadrants, and I won't get too deep into it. But if you want that level of freedom, personal and financial freedom, then this is the way to go about it. There's no doubt.
I will imagine that to be very difficult to transition some of those clients because we live in an environment we've been domesticated to just hand
Yes.
off things and let things being handled by the lawyers and the bankers and the accountants. And now you're telling me that I gotta do something about it, that I have to take ownership. You mean I
Oh
just send
yeah.
my kids to school?
I know. I
So we
just
could
send
go
my kids to
into
school,
this
right? And they'll teach them
conversation
everything.
around how we've been domesticated. So uh,
Oh man.
talk to us about those awakening moments, because I will see them as an awakening for a client when they finally realize that they can
Yeah.
take ownership.
Right. So let me kind of, I guess the best way I can answer this is kind of walk you through my process. I identified three areas within the larger scope of things where there's challenges, there's obstacles for the business owner. The first one is that they're lacking an awareness of their financial persona. So what do I mean by financial persona? It's basically all the experiences that you've had and where a lot of those experiences come from. Anybody? Where do those experiences with money come from early on?
Your
Well,
parents.
your parents, right? Your parents and your society later on, in a gradual increasing. So basically, what we have to do there is kind of talk to people again on their level, like you said, Victor. And I talk about my personal experience. And my personal experience is that I come from a family um, who, back in Puerto Rico, my family's from Puerto Rico, they actually owned a coffee plantation. All right. And then, so when the United States came and invaded Puerto Rico, eventually they took over those lands to create sugar cane fields for what is now Domino, Domino, the sugar company. So if you could imagine my great grandfather owning a plantation, right? And then literally having to work on this almost the same soil that he owned as an employee cutting sugar. You think that's pretty traumatic? Right. So I think, that basically impacts the generations moving forward. Right. So, but it took me a lot of time of and talking, introspection and and digging and looking at my family to understand that. Because most people won't think that far back. Right. They don't understand the generational financial generation moves forward. They say, I think there's a doc says that forward generations, if you could believe that. So the anxiety that they've suffered, even genetically, can affect the generations moving forward with a lot of those kind of symptoms. So you can imagine that kind of what that would bring forward into my family. My parents grew up poor, so of course I had a lot of pressure going to school. So I had to go to school and kind of do all the things that we've all done. We've been trained to do, like you say, we're being programmed to do. And I woke up one day and I realized that this wasn't the way. It just was not the way anymore. School, I think school got in the way of my education, if you will.
Mm,
And I
that's a
think
good way
that
to
happens
put
to a
it.
lot of people. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So, that's where I start. Mhm. Go ahead.
go ahead.
You had a question? Oh, okay. So yeah, I was just gonna say that's the first key, right? So and that's something that's very understandable. The second one is that people's baseline financial literacy is just not where it needs to be as a business owner. Now, why? Well, I can go into why. It's our education system. Our education system in this country was built around the need to develop factory workers, industrial age. All right. So, even I think Rockefeller said it. He was like, I don't need people to think. I need people to work, to know how to work. So you can imagine just carried this forward. All right. So, and that's Rockefeller probably. And I think if you put his wealth back then into today's dollars, he's still most rich person in this world, the wealthiest person ever, if you want to just look at that. So baseline financial literacy, they didn't teach us that in school, right? All right. I mean, I know I didn't get it. And I went to school in the inner city. So I didn't even have, in fact, I taught myself how to write a check because I had to write checks for my grandmother. My grandmother used to drag me around everywhere to translate. So that's how I got into a lot of that stuff. So the whole thing is that this prevents business owners from kind of getting that clear vision on a financial level, how the business is performing, right? So how can you get in a car that's foggy, driving, and you don't know where you're going? You have a fog, right? Right. So that's the second point. Mike.
Well, no, I never thought of it the way you just explained it. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I had graduated law school. And so my parents both work. My mom's a teacher. My dad worked for the government his whole life. And they were they were the poor dad in the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where you got to work for the government, and then you're going to retire. Well, my mom is in her mid 70s and she's still working. But that book, though, really changed the way that my wife's Puerto Rican too. She's from Ponce.
Awesome.
And so,
nice.
But in that generational, your economics being generationally passed down, I think that's a brilliant thought, because we don't really think about that. Like my kids are learning a little bit more from me, but I still have some of the problems that my mom had, because my mom, her parents were Polish farmers, and so they used to hide their money under the mattress because they fled Europe after World War I. So, but it's this idea, like my mom learned from her parents and probably from her grandparents, and they probably didn't know much, honestly. They weren't educated. And so so that's really, really cool that you have your clients start out with basically a re-education into economics.
Yeah.
Because otherwise,
it's kind of like the Army. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. It's like the Marines, right? What do? They break you down to build you up. I've never been in Marines. I'm just saying that's what I've heard. So, it's the same approach, right? Because if you think about it, my company's a scale collective. It's a collective of professionals. Michael, you as an attorney, would you appreciate it if I asked you to come to the collective where we have a partnership based on principles, the same principles, and yet I let this one guy come who's not necessarily ready to even understand anything that you're talking about? No. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So it just makes sense to have to kind of re-educate you, orientate you, I guess is a better word, to what money is, right? Before we can kind of delve into that business, because this is the stuff that drips into your business, right? The lack of a financial persona and the lack of financial literacy it seeps in. You're not just, who gives up? You just don't put a hat on when you start your entrepreneurship journey or start a business. Mm-hmm. So, and to me, it's just crazy. And, it's something that I had to realize too, because it was a challenge for me, even with my awareness, my financial awareness. It was still rough for me to start a business because I had to get out of that employee mindset, you see? So it's a challenge. And I think it's something that's necessary. And maybe it hasn't been thought of before, but this is what has to happen, because I'll tell you what, I was reading today, 80% of all youth right now in high school say that they don't have any awareness. They have no understanding of finances. So here we are, building the next generation of people. Yeah.
So let me bring us into the arena, because the audience that we have are coaches who are either transitioning into solopreneurs or have been in trying to build a coaching practice and are not where they want to be. And so you bring up two excellent points. One, it's the trauma that we may be still carrying on, like you were mentioning, Michael, around money and your relationship with money. And then the second thing is our own ignorance for the basic understanding of financial well-being and how to be part of the process that has already been put in place, like building credit. There's a process. If you follow the process, if you don't, 1, 2, 3, you'll get your credit score to 800 plus. But you must follow the process. But if we don't know it, then we are gonna. Some days it's gonna be 600. Some other days are going to be less than 600.
That's right.
And the third thing that I see as I hear you talk is that emotional value that we may give to money and financial well-being. And as coaches, I will venture to say, I don't know that I know any numbers, but I will venture to say, if I was going to put numbers, it's an 80-20 rule. 80% of us will do the work, even if we don't get paid as much. But it should be the other way around, because the value that we're bringing is so paramount to the individuals or the businesses that we're coaching that we
Right.
ought to turn that around. Dr. Juzad talk about it on on um, on positive intelligence around the
Yeah.
help that we as coaches need to elevate our our need to to charge a fair dollar amount. There's no reason why we couldn't leave corporate America and have a certain figure number that we made and just get the same thing or more as a solopreneur. It's not going to happen overnight, but that should
Oh,
be the goal. So
right. Yeah.
talk,
And
talk to, talk to me.
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because that actually brings me to my third point. The
Mhm.
third thing is, when you're leaving business as a coach and you want to just start this coaching business, well, you got to have a vision, number one, right? And I think as coaches, that's kind of one of the benefits. We each have a vision. I've heard, I've met a lot of coaches and they kind of know where they want to be. But then let's go back to the financial thing again. How do we tie that in financially, right? How do we tie that into a financial and so we can see it financially? And of course, I tell my clients there's always has to be a 10-year, 5-year, 2-year plan. 10 years is where you want to be in 10 years, man. What is it and how do we get there? All right, what does your company have to be in order to get there? All right, so we work our way backwards. All right, so like you said, I want to make $250,000 a year. All right, by the third year, my coaching practice. Fine. Let's talk about what needs to happen in order for you to get there. And what I mean by what happens is what do you need to do? What targets do you need to hit? Because a lot of what happens, guys, is that, and I think you guys understand is accountants are backwards thinking, right? We think in black and red. So we're always coming to you guys, but like, oh, you didn't meet this KPI for the third quarter. And that's where the conversation ends. But that's not what should be happening, right? This is the difference. What we should be telling them is how analyzing what's going wrong, maybe if you're not getting to that, if we're not meeting that goal, and brainstorming and thinking about how we can modify the business in order to get there. How do we change the process? Maybe it's whatever it may be. Maybe it's a product you guys are selling. Maybe it's a coach's program online. Okay, so what's wrong? What do we need to tweak? All right, maybe it's the SEO. I don't know, but that's how I work our way down to where we get our clients to meet, and I call them our partners because at that point we're not even clients, they're partners. How do we get them to where they need to be? And that's what my collective is all about. All right, so that's what that's the goal from day one.
So if you think of a gift that you have, the gift of awakening financial well-being in others. Yeah, that's a gift. I was going to ask you,
Yeah,
what would be
yeah.
their gift? How would you put it in a gift term, if you will?
Connectedness. I know how to connect with my clients. I've been on both sides of the coin, man. So it's and I like to think that I'm a personable person. I am not a big small talker. I'm pretty direct, I think. So once we speak to me, I think I can get along with most people, and I can kind of talk up, whatever level they're at.
So for the viewers out there, you mentioned the 4 quadrants. That's what it's called, correct?
Yep.
What
That's right.
other book or two would you recommend for people to get started with?
Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay.
You
So
can narrow it
coaches
down.
out there. Yeah. Coaches out there, I'll give you two books by the same author because I think for me as a coach, it's like, whoa, is The Obstacle is the Way and Discipline is Destiny by Ryan Holiday. Very, very impactful books. And they don't talk about money, don't worry.
I, I'm a huge Ryan Holiday fan. I think here's another tip. I think anyone who's watching this should join the Daily Stoic.
Yes,
That's
I'm
an
on it. Oh,
excellent. I I mean, I got into Stoic philosophy a couple years ago, and it literally changed my life.
yes, me too. Wow. Okay, so we got to talk. That's fantastic.
The way I
That
look at
is
everything,
awesome.
my anxiety levels, everything, the way I do
I
cases,
know.
deal with family, I worry about what I can control, and it all comes back to, like what you were talking about is dealing with getting back to yourself rather than trying to fix everyone. Fix your own financial house, fix your own family, fix your health. Do what you can to yourself before you
Oh
venture
yeah.
out and start trying to fix everyone else.
And
Yeah,
hence
I
the job
learned
of coaches to awaken the magic in others.
that's right. And that's the thing. Hey, listen, I learned the hard way. 10 years ago, I kind of went through my transformation, I would like to call it. It probably got it accelerated a lot earlier than that. Had I had the awareness of coaching and all that stuff to guide me. But got here. But yeah, I think it could have been much, much easier for me.
When I turned 40, I'm 48 now, but when I turned 40 and then when I turned 45, I think those were like for me too big. I thought I was doing everything right. I was rushing around. I was doing well financially and with my profession, but that's when I started getting into like fixing myself. Like when
Yeah.
45 is when I started reading the Stoic books, and that's led to a lot of other books. So,
The rabbit hole.
yep.
The
Now
proverbial rabbit hole. Yeah.
it's never too late to start trying to fix yourself, whether you're 30 or 60 or whatever your age is. You can always learn and grow.
Well, the way I see it is this. Look, I'm the last male of my generation. So I got to go out big, right? So this is
Mhm.
not about me. And I know everybody likes to say that, but this definitely is not about me. This is about what I can leave to my children, to my daughter, and then my three stepchildren. So that's all it's about. I mean, if you can see it that way, then a lot of this stuff is just easy peasy because this is just it's part for the course. It's part of the experience. It's part of the journey.
So, Victor,
It sounds like we're at a ending point from our guest today. Um, I'm taking away the importance of vulnerability and something that we know, but we tend to forget often is it is know thyself first. And Michael said it earlier by making sure that we fix ourselves before we try to fix everything else. I was thinking about a conversation that we had earlier, Michael, you and I, around my comment of we are in search of ourselves. We're trying to figure out who the heck we are.
Yeah, yeah,
uh, and so we have a very important job to do. It's make sure that we find ourselves. And for those of us that are out there um, building that coaching practice, trying to do our very best as coaches and helping others awaken, like Jose is doing, literally awaken us to the things that we need to change in order for us to embrace the financial well-being that we can have. And so I'm excited about conversations to have, Jose, because
yeah.
we got to bring you back and continue to tell us more of the stories that you've encountered with your clients, but more importantly, how you continue to empower others. If I can think of a word, empower others
Yeah.
to accelerate their financial well-being. So how do our viewers get a hold of you? How can they best get in touch with you if they want to know more about the skill practice and the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. You can reach me at J Ortiz, Ortiz, at thescalecollective.net. My website's currently under reconstruction, should be up soon, but it's going to be very, very interactive. That is the www.thescalecollective.net website.
And that wraps it up. Two Puerto Ricans and a Colombian.
Wow.
Y podemos hablar español si quiere. Porque
Ahora
Michael,
sí.
Podemos si quieres.
Wow, wow.
Michael habla español.
Dos hijos boricua.
Mira eso.
All right. We enjoyed having you on here. And
Yeah,
thank
man.
you for
Thank
your
you.
time. Until next time, this is Cracking the Coaching Code. Take care.
Take care now.